Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Welcome to We Do Better News. My name is Rick Rifkin, coming to you from Austin, Texas. I hope you guys have had a great long weekend. I'm shooting this on Labor Day on Monday, and just having a good time with some extra time off, and hope you guys got enough rest and are ready to get back at it. So we've got a great show for you today. We're talking about kids teaching coding. We're talking about a doctor with a special kind of micro practice, his own experiment in that. We're talking about a nonprofit that helps senior citizens. And then we have a really special guest coming on who's here to talk about really just alternatives to actually government services as a whole. So we'll get more into that later on. All right, let's get started. Nonprofit called Dot for Kids has been teaching teenagers how to code. And it's actually run by a teenager, and it's in Thurston County, Washington. And the girl's name is Smriti Somasundaram. And here's a picture of her. She's currently 14 years old, and she's been running workshops for several months where she goes in and teaches kids from the age of about 10 to 15, boys and girls, how to code. And she does this with about a dozen students or 24 students at a time. And she's inspired lots of young women to actually continue learning how to code, and they may end up pursuing that career later in life. And so she's been doing this with sponsorship from a nonprofit in her area called Together, also in collaboration with Big Brothers Big Sisters, the Girl Scouts, and in partnership with her local government in Thurston County. All right, and they've got workshops every month, and so it just has you thinking, what were we doing at 14? Were we learning how to code, let alone teaching other people how to code? I think it's fantastic that she's taken this on, and I hope that this program expands. I noticed on their website, you'll have that in the show notes, that they actually have ambassadors, and they're looking to expand this throughout the state of Washington and possibly other states. Probably higher in Southern California, and things like memory care and nursing homes are often $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, and oftentimes a lot of that has to come out of pocket, and it's just often unsustainable for families and people in retirement. So through a fixed fee basis, anywhere from $700 to about $1,200 a year, Palos Verdes Peninsula Village is able to take care of seniors in the community, and really, what they're able to do is that they go and visit them regularly. So they have people that are always checking in on people in their homes, and then they have about 6 visits to the doctor to do their checkups, to do any treatments that they need. So there's an element of transportation, there's added safety, and then there's someone there to check on the people. And what it's allowed these seniors to have is to just kind of have like a new lease on life, because they've got people checking on them, they got people to talk to, and they're not alone in solving their problems. So again, hats off, to Palos Verdes Peninsula Village. Again, here is the name of the nonprofit. Go check them out. We've got the link in the show notes. So this is in from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. A doctor by the name of Dr. Wong has started what he calls a micro practice in Pittsburgh. And what he's done is that he's completely opened up his schedule. He doesn't do appointments. He says, come in, I'll solve any problem for $35. I don't want your insurance. I don't take insurance. You don't need insurance to see me. Everything's $35. So if you need to have a physical, $35. If you got an acne problem, $35. If you need to get a wart frozen off, $35. Have I said $35 enough yet? So anyway, it's very, very affordable what Dr. Wong has set up. And there's a link to his website. It's called ihealth.clinic. And he also outlines a lot of the problems that physicians face when they deal with insurance, and then the problems that the consumers face, the people actually visiting the doctor face. And what happens is that insurance adds a lot of undue cost into the process, a cost and time. Physicians spend about twice as much time doing administrative tasks as they do actually seeing patients, and that has a cost to it. And there's all the additional administrative staff, and there's the additional software that they have to manage it, and they have to go through compliance training and all kinds of stuff just so that they can swipe your insurance card. So it's not like all the money, well, the money does go into their pocket, right, because they do charge more, but they don't get to keep all of it, and so a lot of times it ends up being a wash. And so Dr. Wong's practice is a new take on the direct care model, or the direct pay model, where patients can go in, they have a monthly subscription fee, anywhere from $10 to $100 a month, and they have basically unlimited access to their physician. And so what Dr. Wong has done is that he's made it even more affordable by just making it a pay-as-you-go type of operation. And so I'm excited to see that, and I'm excited to see what other physicians decide to do in the space to make things less cumbersome and more affordable. Our guest today is a very interesting fellow. His name is Titus Gebel, and he is a German national who lives in Monaco. And Titus has experience in international law. He has a PhD in international law and was a lawyer for many years before he went on to found a mining company in Germany. The mining company later went on to be publicly listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Titus is now retired after several years in business, and he lives in Monaco. And he is the founder and CEO of Free Private Cities, Inc., and they are a company that works to create services that are like a government, that have all the sort of basic functions that we need to have a society. But he is working to contract with countries around the world to improve their services and improve efficiency for their citizens. And again, thank you so much for being on, Titus. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started Free Private Cities?
Yes, with pleasure, Rick. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, as you said, I was working as an entrepreneur and had some success, but at the same time, and for many years, I was also politically active, engaged in, I would say, in the classical liberal spectrum in Germany, and was a big promoter of free markets and freedom and self-responsibility. But over the years, I found out that unfortunately in a democracy, there's no majority for that values, right? And I mean, you have to realize that after 30 years, I realized, okay, I can now do the same thing for 30 years, trying to convince people by talking to them, or I just do something completely unexpectedly different result.
Yeah.
Or I could just do something completely new. And I decided that the latter would be my choice. And fortunately, I had this possibility by being financially successful to really work full-time on my passion, develop this Free Private Cities concept over 3 years, from 2015 to 2018, published a book, which has been translated in several languages now, and it's also available as audiobook and etc. And have people supporting me. And as you said, the idea is basically, well, forget about these political struggles. This is a market, and it's called the market of living together. And I'm just offering a new product. And the deal is easy. It's basically the protecting of life, liberty, and property in a defined area, and you pay a fixed amount for that. And if you like, and there are some rules, of course, and if you like it, you sign a real social contract. And I cannot, and here's a big difference, I cannot change that contract later. And this is one of the biggest fallacies, I would say, of our current systems, is that we all are told that there is a social contract and we have agreed to be governed. But the problem is, even if I agree to that, there's one side that is constantly changing the contract, the terms of the contract. And here's a secret, it's not us. Never.
Right.
So there's a disbalance, right? Something is wrong, and because in normal life you wouldn't do that. You go in a restaurant, you say, I want to order this food, and I know what is price, and it's not possible that the waiter or the restaurant owner later says, so by the way, we are bringing you more things that you have not ordered, and you pay double. But this is exactly the situation we as normal citizens are in, right? And that is a problem, and this is also one of the reasons why I relocated to Monaco, because here you're more or less left alone. People can do what they want. The state is guaranteeing security, some infrastructure. And I thought, okay, if this is what people obviously like, because there are many people want to live here, a private company can offer that.
Right.
So this is the basic idea in a nutshell.
And so you said the protection of life, liberty, and property. So that would be something like some kind of court system, some police force, basic emergency response.
Yes.
Anything else? Utilities, right? Maybe.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's the point. You have a police. You have, or call it security. Firefighters, emergency rescue, some infrastructure will be there. There will probably also be a minimum protection that we just do not starve or die on the streets. But this will be all included in the fixed amount. And these things you cannot negotiate. You just have to take it or leave it. But everything apart from these basic services, you can decide on your own. If you want to have an extra insurance for unemployment or health or whatever, and if you want an health insurance, is it a big one or is it a small one or medium one? What kind of education? Certainly we will provide you with some offers, some supply, but it's up to you to choose. So you, instead of political participation, you have maximum self-determination, right? You can decide for your own. Because the basis that is really sought after by everyone is really security, right? You do not want to go out of your house and having fear of being robbed or being killed.
Right.
So, and everybody wants that. That's really something everybody wants, and that is therefore something that we can provide. Normally the state can provide that, but the problem with the state is that they are constantly changing the rules, right? And they say, okay, we have made a new law and now you have to pay for the swimming pool. And this is the good thing about a contractual system, right? If you were a citizen in my free private city and you had subscribed those obligatory package of security and some infrastructure, and they tell you, okay, you have to pay $1,000 a year. That's about the number, right? So, and then your fellow citizens say, hey, let's build a swimming pool, and we form a council, and 90% decide, yeah, let's build a swimming pool. And you say, wait a minute, I haven't signed for that, right? I just signed up with Titus, and I do not want to be part of your council and your decisions. You finance your ideas by yourself. And that's exactly the situation, right? Because in this case, you would be indeed protected by the contract, whereas in the conventional systems, you would just be overruled by majority or by whoever has the right to decide. And that sounds very new and radical, but it's not new and radical because we are doing exactly the same in our daily lives on the product markets and the service markets, right? We do not like our smartphone provider or the technology is not really working, just buy another one.
Yeah.
And that is basically what I want to provide. It's like, look, here is the system. If you like it, please come. And there will be competition, of course. If this is working, and this is a for-profit model, because this is giving me the incentives to treat you well, to attract new customers, and to have an attractive product. Right? This is a much better incentive than pretending that you are working for the common goal, where in reality, first and foremost, you are working for your own sake, right, as a politician. Because people are like that. I'm no different, but if you give me an incentive to treat you right, because otherwise you will cancel a contract, you will leave, and I will eventually become insolvent, right? So this is a good incentive for me to treat you and all the other citizens well, and to stick to the rules that I have promised.
Now, yeah, so that's great. So it's an actual contract people can follow and people can, and the company has to stick to. Now, where in the world are you starting to develop relationships with governments? And are you doing it at the highest level of the government or more at a city level?
Yeah. No, you have to do it at the highest level of the government because it often requires a change of the laws or even the constitution in that particular country. Well, I mean, what I'm saying is, I think you forgot about it because you mentioned it, the courts. Yes, I will provide courts that will be part of the service, which is a very, very unique selling proposition for many countries because the courts in those countries are either not working or corrupt. So if I can offer for the average Joe a working court, that is a big plus in many parts of the world. Right? So I would come with my own people, with my own court system. It's either common law or civil law system, which is formed after internationally best standards. So there's no inventing the wheel new. It's not necessary. But then what I have to ask the government is, look, we need to make that happen, and I tell it it's not a free private cities. Why not? Because there are two words. Well, it is a free private city. That's the concept, and the concept is described well by that term. But in reality, politicians do not necessarily like the words free or private. Right? So you better sell it as it's a special economic zone plus, or it's a prosperity zone. But you have to give up some of your autonomy, or give us some autonomy, and you're keeping sovereignty for foreign policy defense and all that will be still part of the country, comparable to the system China, Hong Kong. But you have also very independent special economic zones in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Two of them even have their own judges with their own British-based legal system. So these are things that make it a little bit easier for me to approach governments. On the other hand, I mean, this is still a very radical new concept. So the reality is that stable Western countries are definitely not interested in that. It's more countries that have some issues, that are forced to look for new ideas, that have found out that special economic zones nobody's interested in because nobody trusts the government and things like that. And so you can, we need that regime for a long period of time, and you need to give some guarantees for investors, investor protection, etc. So this is a big deal, and this is certainly the most difficult part of the whole story is negotiating with governments, but that's what we are currently doing.
Got it. And so you're going to start with a special economic zone, so a specific geographic location, or some kind of an existing state or existing province would be assigned that.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. I mean, the whole Earth is taken, right? There's nothing left, maybe in Antarctica, but nobody wants to go there, right? So you have to negotiate with existing countries. You say, yes, because the special economic zone model is already known, so that makes it easier. Say it's not a special economic zone, it's a special economic zone plus, next level, right? Mm-hmm. But you're right, we need a certain territory, and since my concept says it's 100% voluntary participation, we have to start in uninhabited areas, okay? Ideally with the excess, so that it's later easier to import-export things, even if the government is not really friendly any longer. So, but it's a defined territory, and you need a special status for this territory. Here's the deal: it's a win-win situation, right? If you go into an area that is formerly undeveloped, in a country that has issues with corruption, stability, crime, no investors coming. So we say, okay, look, we form a stable framework here. But here's the deal, you give us autonomy, and then investors are coming. Jobs are created, also for your own people, for your own companies of your country. And normally what happens with the city-states, if you look at Hong Kong, Singapore, or Monaco, a big belt of wealth is established around that cities, and this would be in your state, and you would get all the taxes and all that. So this is the deal proposal we are basically making.
So you're saying that maybe the state itself isn't taxed; it's a tax-free place, but you're saying around it, it's also wealthier.
Yes, and it's a win-win, and we can only also negotiate that we are paying a certain amount per year because we are making use of the protection of this state of maybe some infrastructure. So it's a fair deal to say we are in negotiation with a Central American country, and there the deal is that 12% of our fees would go to this government, right? Which is it's okay. Right, it's a fair deal because they are giving something to us and we are paying back. So normally, indeed, there would be no taxes within our free private city because it's a fee system, right? You pay, as I told you, maybe about $1,000 a year as a fee for mostly for security, some institutions, and for the rest you're on your own. So but still, if companies are coming, if new investors are coming, if people are coming, even on the other side of the border, there will be something created which wasn't there before. So it's easily to show that there can be a win-win situation created by building such a free private city.
Great. And so how can people either get involved or find out more about free private cities?
Yeah, we have set up a website. It's called freeprivatecities.com, and there you can subscribe for a newsletter which is coming every quarter, not more often. And there you will be informed if a new development is taking shape, and there will be a time where we'll say, okay, now it's time. Now we can apply for citizenship or for residence, and but still it's a long process. I mean, we are relatively close. In Central America in one project. The other projects, we have projects in Africa and in the Caucasus region. They are early days. So, but this is going to happen in the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years, maybe even earlier. And other people are working on similar ideas. So I think the time is just right because people do not want to be subjects any longer of governments or even majorities. They want to decide for themselves, and they say, okay, I'm an adult, I can decide for myself. I know I can decide which charities and which political cases I support. And we offer that because we are just a framework provider, right? And how this framework is filled, that is up to you residents. It's a spontaneous order, right? Limited only by the rules in the contract and the legal framework or the stability framework, security framework we have established. And I think this is a much better, much more attractive product than what current societies can offer you. At least that's my business idea and also my philosophical idea. And I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to work on that until the end of my life.
Great. Well, I'm really hopeful that this will turn out, and want to thank you for coming on and for sharing. Also, is your book on the website as well?
Yeah, but it's also available through Amazon or what else is that? The iTunes, Google Books, or whatever. And it's available in English as an audiobook, a printed book, an ebook. So whatever you prefer, it's available. Just you find it over the website or just through Amazon.
And what's the name of the book?
It's called Free Private Cities: Making Governments Compete for You.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Do you ever get the feeling that kids these days are just not all right? They're not okay? That they're more anxious, lost, kind of wayward, just not totally there, and it's that we're not serving them, we're not helping them. And do you ever get the feeling that a lot of it has to do with school? Well, I want to get into that right? Some of the realities, some of the statistics, some of the studies, and what I think the root causes are. So just to give you some stats, between 2009 and 2017, rates of depression rose by more than 60% amongst those ages 14 to 17, and 47% among those ages 12 to 13. Okay, and it isn't just a matter of diagnoses. The number of children and teenagers who are seen in emergency rooms with suicidal thoughts or having attempted suicide between 2007 and 2015 doubled. Okay, so they're not okay. There's your confirmation. All right, and I've got a printout of an op-ed from the New York Times, and I'll have that in the show notes. And I'm just going to read what it says here because they make a Kim Brooks, the writer, made a salient point right here. He says, "I've come to believe that the problems of children's mental and emotional health are caused not by any single change in kids' environment, but by a fundamental shift in the way we view children and child rearing." So it goes all the way down to the foundation, it goes down to the core. All right. Now, I talked a little bit about the school system and really what it's done. And what's happening now is that, like, for example, in New York, there was a white paper released by the government in New York called Birth to Five, and it talks about what kind of programs they're going to roll out to get kids on this head start. It's all about getting kids younger and younger into the education system. At first there was kindergarten, then there was pre-K, and then there's just preschool, and then the next thing it's going to be, can your kid write essays at age 2? All right. And the expectations of teachers and parents have just changed. So look, in 1998, 31% of teachers expected children to learn to read in kindergarten. By 2010, 80% of teachers expected that children learn to read in kindergarten. First of all, why does it matter if your kid can read by the age of 5? And then second, why the huge shift in 12 years? It's not like we all started learning how to read at 5 by 2010. It's not like there was something genetic. Just the expectations changed. And the expectations changed, and so the way that education was delivered also changed. Okay? And what's been happening more and more is that kids that can't pay attention and can't sit still are being called, they're being diagnosed with things like ADHD and ADD. And in fact, a lot of it just has to do with the growth curve of a child, the growth curve of their maturity. And so if you have a really young student, like the youngest kid in the class, they actually have a 30% higher chance of being diagnosed with ADHD just simply because they're not as developed. Okay, and the states across the United States have been pushing to make compulsory education younger and younger. Iowa recently took it to age 4. New York is creating programs for children starting at the age of 3. Okay, and they're making these programs more and more regimented and more about standard tests, STEM, more about college prep, right? And you guys know that this stuff doesn't go anywhere. And in fact, the studies have shown that any kind of Head Start program that you create will actually lose its gains by kindergarten because it's not like the kid retained it. And by the time everyone else is in kindergarten, they get caught up by the end of it. And pretty much everyone's back to square one by first grade, except the kids that were in the Head Start program have a fundamentally different kind of behavior than the kids that weren't, because they weren't with their parents. Okay, they were in school, and school messes kids up. Okay, and I can tell you that because the rates of depression are considerably higher for kids and teens that are in school. When they're on summer break, they're not as depressed. It's as simple as that. Okay, Now, where does the Head Start program come from? Well, it comes from the LBJ days back around 1965. So this was part of, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society program, and in 1965 it provided the government preschool and nutrition programs to low-income children, and it was called the Head Start program. And so now the program is very large. It has a budget of over $10 billion as of 2019. And yeah, this is the program that the Brookings Institute has done research on, has found basically has no effect. But it's been this attitude that's been in place since the 60s that the government's going to take care of our kids and that the government's going to take care of our schooling and that everything's just going to work out. What's happened is that there's been a fundamental abdication of parental responsibility. Parents basically handed their kids over to the government, and before all this was in place, children were raised just fine. And people used to read the great works of literature, and they had very long attention spans. And America was actually quite literate in the first place in the 60s. And so this great social program had become, it got so big that it started just becoming the default option for people, right? People give the responsibility to the government grows, it gets more powerful, it gets more bloated, and now it's in a position where it's doing more harm than good, and people don't know what to do about it. And really, it's really going to be a person by person, family by family shift that's going to be needed for us to combat this, right? Because it's not going to be another reform or another program. That's actually the last thing we need. Okay, we need to either repeal a lot of this legislation or just kind of just take our kids out of it. Just take our kids out of that game and start playing our own game, where kids can have an unstructured learning environment where it's not about being 4 years old and trying to catch up and trying to do math and read and write, because it's not about that. Because by the time they're 18, if they've got schooling for that long, if they've got great parents, they're going to learn all that, right? All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the show. And I hope you guys all had a great Labor Day weekend. If you want to check us out, go to wedobetter.org. If you want to donate, support the show, wedobetter.org/donate. You can also check us out on Facebook, We Do Better US. And yeah, go ahead and hit like, drop a comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. And again, We Do Better News is brought to you by We Do Better. Again, wedobetter.org. Again, my name is Rick Rifkin, coming to you from Austin, Texas. Signing off. Hope to see you soon.